The rain hammered against the windows of the medical facility like angry fists. Dr. Lee Jae-won looked up from his research notes and frowned at the dark sky outside. The storm had been raging for 6 hours now, and it showed no signs of stopping. Lightning cracked across the purple clouds of Ashara Prime, followed by thunder that shook the entire building. Jae-won had been working late again. He always worked late these days. There was not much else to do on this remote planet at the edge of human space. The research station housed only 43 people, and most of them were busy with their own projects. As the only doctor for hundreds of miles, Jae-won spent his time treating minor injuries, updating medical records, and studying the local wildlife. The job was not what he had expected when he volunteered for frontier duty 3 years ago. Back on Earth, his colleagues had painted pictures of exciting alien encounters and groundbreaking medical discoveries. The reality was much more boring. Most days, he treated scraped knees, headaches, and the occasional food poisoning from someone eating the wrong local fruit. Tonight was different, though. The storm made everything feel more alive, more dangerous. The research station's power flickered every few minutes, and the backup generators hummed loudly in the basement. Jae-won had already checked his emergency supplies twice. In weather like this, anything could happen. He was reading about the wing structure of the local bird-like creatures when something crashed into the ground outside his window. The impact was so violent that it rattled the medical equipment on his shelves. Several bottles of medicine fell to the floor, but Jae-won barely noticed. He pressed his face against the glass, trying to see through the rain and darkness. At first, he thought it might be a piece of debris from the storm. Trees had been falling all day, and the wind was strong enough to pick up small buildings. But as lightning flashed across the sky, Jae-won saw something that made his heart skip a beat. There was a figure lying in the mud near his clinic, a large figure that was definitely not human. Jae-won grabbed his emergency medical kit and rain jacket. He did not stop to think about the danger. His medical training had taught him to respond to emergencies without hesitation. Someone or something was hurt, and that was all that mattered. The rain soaked through his jacket within seconds of stepping outside. The wind was so strong that he had to lean forward just to walk. Each step through the mud was a struggle, but he pushed forward toward the fallen figure. When he got closer, Jae-won stopped and stared. The being lying in the mud was unlike anything he had ever seen. It looked mostly human in shape, but was much larger, probably 8 feet tall. Its skin had a strange shimmer to it, and what looked like scales covered parts of its arms and chest. But the most shocking feature was the pair of large, damaged wings extending from its back. The wings were torn and bleeding. Dark blue blood mixed with the rainwater, creating strange patterns in the mud. The being's breathing was shallow and uneven. Even in the dim light, Jae-won could see multiple wounds across its body. Jae-won knelt beside the stranger and checked for a pulse. The heartbeat was there, but weak and irregular. The being was unconscious, probably from blood loss and trauma. Without proper medical attention, it would die within the hour. Looking at the size of the injured alien, Jae-won realized he could not carry it alone. He ran back to his clinic and grabbed a motorized stretcher. The machine was designed for emergencies exactly like this one. He drove it back through the storm, fighting the wind and rain every inch of the way. Getting the unconscious being onto the stretcher was harder than he expected. The alien was incredibly heavy, and its wings made the process complicated. Jae-won had to be careful not to cause more damage to the already torn wing membranes. It took him 15 minutes of careful maneuvering before he finally got the patient secured. The trip back to the clinic felt like it took forever. The stretcher's wheels kept getting stuck in the mud, and the wind kept trying to push them off course. But Jae-won was determined. He had taken an oath to preserve life regardless of species or circumstances. Inside the clinic, bright lights revealed the full extent of the alien's injuries. The wing damage was worse than Jae-won had initially thought. The membranes were shredded in several places, and he could see broken bones beneath the torn flesh. There were also deep cuts on the being's arms and legs, probably from whatever had caused the crash. Jae-won worked quickly to stabilize his patient. He connected monitoring equipment to track vital signs and started an IV drip with a universal plasma substitute that worked on most alien physiologies. The being's blood pressure was dangerously low, and its temperature was dropping fast. The wing injuries required immediate attention. Jae-won had never treated anything like them before, but he understood the basic principles of tissue repair. He carefully cleaned each wound, removing dirt and debris. The wing structure was amazingly complex, with delicate bones and muscles that seemed almost too fragile to support flight. As he worked, Jaewon found himself fascinated by the alien's anatomy. The scales were not just decorative but seemed to serve as natural armor. The bone structure was denser than human bones but still lightweight. Everything about this being was designed for flight and combat. Hours passed as Jaewon sutured wounds and stabilized broken bones. His hands moved automatically, guided by years of medical training. He used every technique he knew, adapting them for this unique patient. The work was exhausting, but he could not stop. Something about this mysterious stranger compelled him to do everything possible to save its life. By dawn, the storm had finally passed. Sunlight streamed through the clinic windows, revealing Jaewon's patient in much clearer detail. The being's features were noble and sharp, with high cheekbones and a strong jaw. Even unconscious, there was something regal about its appearance. Jaewon collapsed into a chair beside the bed, exhausted but satisfied. The alien's vital signs were stable and the bleeding had stopped. The wings would need weeks to heal properly, but the immediate danger had passed. He had saved a life, just as he had sworn to do when he became a doctor. What Jaewon did not know was that he had just saved the most important life in the galaxy. The sun was already high in the sky when Jaewon heard movement from the medical bed. He had dozed off in his chair after working through the night, and the sound of shifting fabric woke him instantly. His patient was stirring, golden eyes slowly opening to take in the unfamiliar surroundings. Jaewon sat up quickly, his medical instincts taking over despite his exhaustion. The alien's eyes were remarkable, like molten gold with flecks of amber. They held an intelligence that was both ancient and sharp, scanning the room with careful attention to detail. When those eyes finally settled on Jaewon, the doctor felt a strange mixture of respect and caution. The being tried to sit up but winced in pain as the movement pulled at his injured wings. Jaewon immediately moved to his side, gently pressing him back down onto the bed. The alien was stronger than any human, but he was also smart enough to recognize that fighting would only make his injuries worse. "Please stay still," Jaewon said in Galactic Standard, the common language used for communication between different species. "Your wings are badly damaged. You need to rest." The alien studied Jaewon's face for a long moment before speaking. His voice was deep and smooth, with an accent that Jaewon could not place. "You are human," he said, not as a question but as a statement of fact. "Yes, I am Dr. Lee Jaewon. I found you outside during the storm last night." Jaewon reached for his scanner to check the patient's vital signs. "How do you feel?" "Like I fell from a great height," the alien replied, and there was something almost like humor in his voice. "Which I suppose I did." Jaewon nodded and ran the scanner over his patient. The readings were much better than they had been during the night. Blood pressure was stable, and the internal injuries seemed to be healing faster than expected. "Your body is recovering well. What should I call you?" The alien hesitated for just a moment. "Dasung," he said finally. "My name is Daesung." "Well, Daesung, you are very lucky to be alive. You lost a lot of blood in your wings." Jaewon trailed off, looking at the bandaged appendages. "I have never treated injuries like these before." "What kind of ship were you flying?" Daesung's expression became guarded. "No ship. I was flying on my own when the storm caught me." Jaewon blinked in surprise. He had assumed the wings were decorative or perhaps vestigial organs. The idea that they were actually functional seemed impossible. "You can actually fly with those?" "I could," Daesung said quietly. "Before this happened." The sadness in his voice made Jaewon feel uncomfortable. He had heard that tone before, from patients who had lost important abilities due to injury. It was the sound of someone facing an uncertain future. "The wings will heal," Jaewon said with more confidence than he felt. "It will take time, but the structure is still intact. You should be able to fly again." Daesung looked at him with something that might have been hope. "You truly believe this?" "I am a doctor," Jaewon replied. "I do not make promises I cannot keep." Over the next few hours, Jaewon learned more about his unusual patient. Daesung was intelligent and well-educated, speaking several languages fluently. He seemed to know a great deal about galactic politics and history, though he was vague about his own background. When Jaewon asked where he came from, Daesung would only say that his home was far from here. What impressed Jaewon most was Daesung's politeness. Despite his intimidating size and alien appearance, he was unfailingly courteous. He thanked Jaewon for every small service and apologized for being a burden. This was not the behavior Jaewon had expected from someone who looked like they could break him in half without effort. "You must have family who are worried about you," Jaewon said while changing the bandages on Daesung's wings. "Should I try to contact someone?" Daesung was quiet for a long time. "My people will find me when they are able," he said finally. "For now I am content to be here." The wing cleaning process was delicate work. Jaewon had to be careful not to disturb the healing tissue while making sure the wound stayed clean. He was amazed by the complexity of the wing structure. The bones were hollow like a bird's but much stronger. The muscles were arranged in patterns that would allow for incredible precision in flight. "These are beautiful," Jaewon said without thinking. "I mean, the engineering is remarkable. I have never seen anything like it." Daesung seemed pleased by the compliment. "My people are proud of their wings. They are both a gift and a responsibility." "What do you mean by responsibility?" "When you can fly above others, you must choose how to use that ability. Do you soar for your own pleasure, or do you use your height to watch over those below?" Jaewon considered this while he worked. There was something philosophical about the way Daesung spoke, as if every comment carried deeper meaning. "What do you choose?" "I try to watch over others," Daesung said softly, "though I am not always successful." As the day wore on, Jaewon found himself genuinely enjoying his patient's company. Daesung was an excellent listener and asked thoughtful questions about human culture and medicine. He seemed particularly interested in why Jaewon had chosen to work on such a remote planet. "I wanted to help people who had no one else to help them," Jaewon explained. "Out here on the frontier, medical care is rare. Sometimes I am the only doctor for hundreds of miles." "And you chose this isolation willingly?" "Yes, it feels important," Daesung nodded approvingly. "Sacrifice for the benefit of others is a noble path." There was something in the way he said it that made Jaewon think Daesung understood sacrifice very well. But when he tried to ask more personal questions, his patient would always redirect the conversation back to neutral topics. By evening, Daesung was strong enough to sit up and take solid food. Jaewon prepared a meal using ingredients that his medical database indicated were safe for most alien physiologies. They ate together in comfortable silence, watching the sunset through the clinic windows. "The sky is beautiful here," Daesung observed. "Yes, it is. The storms can be dangerous, but the clear evenings make up for it." Daesung smiled, and for a moment he looked almost human. Beauty often comes with danger. The most magnificent things in the universe are usually the most powerful. Jaewon had the strange feeling that Daesung was talking about more than just sunsets, but he did not press for details. His patient was healing well, and that was what mattered most. Everything else could wait. 3 weeks had passed since the storm brought Daesung to Jaewon's clinic. The alien's recovery was remarkable, much faster than any human could heal from similar injuries. His wings were still tender, but the worst damage had mended itself with surprising speed. Jaewon had never seen tissue repair at such a rate, even with the best medical technology. During the long days of recovery, Daesung had become more than just a patient. He was now a friend and a source of endless fascination. Every conversation revealed new depths to his knowledge and experience. He spoke of worlds that Jaewon had only read about in scientific journals, describing them with the familiarity of someone who had actually been there. "Tell me about the crystal forests of Velthara," Jaewon said one afternoon while checking Daesung's wing mobility. He had discovered that his patient was an excellent storyteller, and these tales made the routine medical checks much more interesting. Daesung's eyes took on that distant look they always got when he spoke of far-off places. "The trees are not really trees at all, but living crystal formations that grow toward the light of 3 suns. They sing when the wind passes through them, creating music that can be heard for miles." "Singing trees," Jaewon mused, carefully testing the flexibility of the wing joints. "That sounds like something from a fairy tale." "Your fairy tales often contain more truth than your science books," Daesung replied with a smile. "The universe is far stranger and more wonderful than most beings realize." Jaewon had learned not to question these descriptions too closely. Everything Daesung told him sounded impossible, yet the alien spoke with such confidence in detail that doubting him felt foolish. Either Daesung was the most creative liar in the galaxy, or he had actually experienced these wonders firsthand. What about the floating cities of Karis Prime? Jaewon asked. Are those real too? Very real and very impressive. The entire civilization lives in the clouds because the surface of their planet is too dangerous. They have mastered gravity manipulation in ways that would amaze your human engineers. As Daesung spoke, Jaewon noticed something interesting. The aliens' descriptions were not those of a casual tourist. He spoke about political systems, trade routes, and military capabilities with the insight of someone who had been personally involved in high-level discussions. This suggested that Daesung was much more important than he pretended to be. You seem to know a lot about galactic politics, Jaewon observed carefully. Daesung's expression became guarded. I travel extensively. One learns things. It was the same evasive answer he always gave when Jaewon tried to learn more about his background. The alien was clearly hiding something significant, but Jaewon had decided not to push. Everyone had secrets, and Daesung had a right to his privacy. What fascinated Jaewon most were the stories about Daesung's own people. He spoke of them with obvious pride and deep affection, describing a civilization that sounded both ancient and incredibly advanced. They were called the Draconic Dominion, and according to Daesung, they had been spacefaring for thousands of years. My people value honor above all else, Daesung explained one evening as they watched the sunset. We believe that how you treat others, especially those weaker than yourself, defines your true character. That sounds like a good philosophy, Jaewon said, though it must be difficult to maintain when you have real power. Power without honor is meaningless, Daesung replied firmly. A ruler who cannot be trusted is no ruler at all. There was something in the way he said it that made Jaewon wonder if Daesung spoke from personal experience. The alien often talked about leadership and responsibility as if they were subjects he knew intimately. But when Jaewon asked direct questions, Daesung would deflect with another story or change the subject entirely. The most intriguing tales were about dragon culture itself. According to Daesung, his people could transform between humanoid and true dragon forms at will. In their dragon shapes, they were massive creatures capable of flight through space itself, breathing fire hot enough to melt starship hulls. That seems almost impossible, Jaewon said. The energy requirements alone would be enormous. Your science has not yet discovered all the forces that exist in the universe, Daesung replied. My people learned to harness solar radiation and cosmic energy millions of years ago. We are as much creatures of space as we are of any planet. Jaewon found himself believing these incredible claims despite their impossibility. There was something about Daesung's presence that suggested vast hidden depths. The alien carried himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to being obeyed, even while playing the role of a grateful patient. One afternoon, while they were discussing the complex social structures of various alien civilizations, Daesung's expression grew troubled. He had been talking about trade agreements and territorial disputes, but suddenly he fell silent. Is something wrong? Jaewon asked. I have been away from my responsibilities for too long, Daesung said quietly. My people may be facing difficulties in my absence. What kind of difficulties? Daesung hesitated, clearly debating how much to reveal. There are younger members of my species who question our traditional alliances. They believe we should expand our territory through conquest rather than diplomacy. And you disagree with that approach? Violence should always be the last option, not the first. But some of my people have forgotten this wisdom. Daesung's golden eyes reflected genuine worry. Without proper guidance, they may make choices that bring disaster to many worlds. The conversation revealed more about Daesung's true position than he probably intended. Jaewon was beginning to suspect that his patient was not just a member of Dragon Society, but someone with significant influence within it. The way he spoke about guiding his people and preventing war suggested a leadership role of some kind. Your wings are nearly healed, Jaewon said gently. You could probably fly short distances now if you needed to. Daesung flexed his wings experimentally. The movement was smooth and pain-free, a vast improvement from just days before. Yes, I can feel the strength returning. Soon I will be able to travel properly again. Will you return to your people immediately? I must, Daesung said with obvious reluctance. Though I will miss our conversations. It has been refreshing to speak with someone who sees me as simply Daesung rather than... He stopped himself before finishing the sentence. Rather than what? Jaewon asked curiously. But Daesung had already turned away, watching the alien constellations appear in the darkening sky. Rather than someone with too many responsibilities, he said finally. Jae-won sensed there was much more to that answer, but he did not press for details. Whatever Daesung was hiding, it was clearly weighing heavily on him. The alien might be physically healed, but emotionally he seemed burdened by concerns that went far beyond personal recovery. As they sat in comfortable silence, Jae-won found himself dreading the day when Daesung would leave. The alien had brought excitement and wonder to his isolated life. When that departure came, the research station would feel very empty indeed. The 4th week of Daesung's recovery brought unexpected complications. What started as a routine medical check turned into something that changed everything Jae-won thought he knew about his patient. It began when Jae-won noticed something strange about Daesung's blood samples. The alien's healing had been remarkably fast, but the blood chemistry was unlike anything in the medical databases. The cellular structure showed patterns that seemed almost impossible, with energy readings that defied conventional biology. "These results cannot be right," Jae-won muttered, running the tests for the 3rd time. The scanner kept showing the same impossible data. Daesung's blood contained traces of elements that should not exist in any living creature. Daesung noticed his concern immediately. "Is something wrong with the test results?" "Your blood chemistry is very unusual," Jae-won said carefully. "I am seeing energy signatures that I have never encountered before." "What exactly are your people?" For the first time since they had met, Daesung looked genuinely uncomfortable. He was quiet for a long moment, clearly struggling with how much to reveal. "We are an old species," he said finally. "Much older than humans realize." "How old?" "We were flying between stars when most worlds were still forming. Our civilization predates every other spacefaring race by millions of years." Jae-won stared at him in shock. "That would make you one of the first races, but those are just legends." "Legends often contain truth," Daesung replied. "My people prefer to let others believe we are myth. It makes diplomacy easier when no one knows your true capabilities." The revelation hit Jae-won like a physical blow. The first races were supposedly extinct, their civilizations lost to time and cosmic disasters. If Daesung was telling the truth, then Jae-won had been treating a member of the most ancient and powerful species in the galaxy. "Why are you telling me this?" Jae-won asked. "Because you have earned my trust," Daesung said simply, "and because I may need your help with something far more serious than healing my wings." Before Jae-won could ask what he meant, alarms began blaring throughout the research station. The emergency communication system crackled to life, broadcasting a message that made both of them freeze. "Attention all human personnel. This is Admiral Park Hyun-woo of the Earth Defense Force. We have received reports of an unidentified alien presence in this sector. All civilians are to remain in their quarters until further notice. Military units are en route to investigate." Jae-won felt his blood turn cold. Someone had reported Daesung's presence to the military. In a few hours, the research station would be crawling with Earth Defense Force soldiers, and they would not be as understanding as a frontier doctor. "You need to leave," Jae-won said urgently. "Now before they arrive." But Daesung was not moving. Instead, he was listening to something that Jae-won could not hear. His golden eyes had taken on an intense, focused expression. "It is too late," he said quietly. "They are already here." "Who is already here?" "My people. They have found me." Jae-won rushed to the window and looked up at the sky. At first he saw nothing unusual, just the normal pattern of stars and the research station's navigation lights. Then something moved across the constellation of Orion, something large and dark that blocked out the stars as it passed. "I do not see any ships," Jae-won said. "You are looking for technology," Daesung replied. "My people do not always need ships." As if responding to his words, shapes began descending from the upper atmosphere. They were too far away to see clearly, but they moved with a fluid grace that no mechanical craft could match. As they came closer, Jae-won realized with growing amazement that they were living creatures flying through space without any protection. "Dragons," he whispered. "3 of them," Daesung confirmed, "including my brother Minho and my advisor Taehoon. They must be very worried to risk exposure like this." The implications crashed down on Jae-won all at once. If Daesung's family and advisors were coming to rescue him personally, then he was not just an important member of Dragon Society. He was someone at the very top of their hierarchy. What is your real position among your people? Jae-won demanded. Daesung met his eyes steadily. I am their king. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Jae-won had been treating the ruler of one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy like a common patient. He had bandaged the wings of a being who could probably destroy entire star systems with a thought. You are the Dragon King, Jae-won said, barely able to believe his own words. Yes, and my absence has created a crisis that threatens far more than just my people. Before Jae-won could respond, the clinic's outer door exploded inward. 3 figures in humanoid form strode through the wreckage, their eyes blazing with barely controlled fury. The leader was a dragon who looked remarkably similar to Daesung, but with silver scales instead of gold. His presence filled the room with an almost overwhelming sense of power and danger. Brother, the silver-scaled dragon said, his voice carrying both relief and anger. Do you have any idea what chaos your disappearance has caused? Hello, Minho, Daesung replied calmly. I assume the young ones have been making trouble? Trouble? The third dragon, an older being with bronze markings, stepped forward. Your Majesty, 3 star systems are on the brink of war. The Catherian Empire has moved fleets to our borders, and half the Galactic Council thinks you are dead. Jae-won stood frozen in the corner, watching this reunion of beings who could reshape the galaxy with their decisions. The casual way they discussed interstellar politics made his head spin. This was so far beyond his experience that he felt like a child observing the conversations of gods. And who? Minho asked, turning his blazing gaze toward Jae-won. Is this human who dared to touch the Dragon King? The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Jae-won realized that his life might be measured in seconds now. These were not beings who tolerated disrespect toward their monarch, and he had been treating their king like an ordinary patient for weeks. This is Dr. Lee Jae-won, Daesung said firmly, moving to place himself between his brother and the human doctor. He saved my life when I crashed during the storm. Without his skill and compassion, your king would be dead. Minho's expression shifted from anger to surprise. A human saved you? More than that, Daesung continued. He treated me with kindness and respect without knowing who I was. He asked for nothing in return except the pleasure of my company. The bronze-scaled advisor, whom Jae-won assumed was Taehoon, studied the human doctor with new interest. This is most unusual. Humans rarely show such selflessness toward unknown aliens. Dr. Jae-won is not like most humans, Daesung said. He embodies the best qualities of his species. Jae-won found his voice at last. Your Majesty, I had no idea who you were. I would have treated you exactly the same way regardless. I know, Daesung replied with a slight smile. That is precisely why your actions are so remarkable. Minho and Taehoon exchanged meaningful glances. Something was being communicated between them that Jae-won could not understand. Finally, Minho nodded slowly. Brother, we must return immediately. The situation grows worse with each passing day. I understand, Daesung said. But first, we have a debt to repay. The atmosphere in the small clinic became electric with tension as more dragons arrived. Through the broken doorway, Jae-won could see additional figures landing outside. Each one was magnificent in their humanoid form, but he could sense the incredible power they held barely contained beneath their civilized appearance. Daesung turned to address his people, and suddenly everything about him changed. The friendly patient that Jae-won had come to know disappeared, replaced by someone who radiated absolute authority. His voice carried the weight of countless years and unquestioned command. My loyal subjects, Daesung said, I present to you Dr. Lee Jae-won, the human who saved the life of your king. He is to be treated with the highest respect and honor. The dragons in the room immediately bowed deeply toward Jae-won, a gesture that made the human doctor extremely uncomfortable. He was not used to being the center of attention, especially from beings who could probably level mountains without breaking a sweat. Your Majesty, Taehoon said urgently, we must discuss the situation with the Crimson faction. They have been spreading word that you abandoned your duties. Some of the younger dragons are beginning to believe their lies. The Crimson faction, Daesung repeated, his golden eyes hardening. I should have dealt with them before I left on this mission. What mission? Jae-won asked, finally finding his voice. You never told me why you were flying alone during the storm. Daesung glanced at his brother and advisor before answering. I was traveling to a secret meeting with representatives from the Andromedan Alliance. They had information about a threat that could destroy multiple star systems. But someone leaked the meeting location and I was attacked before I could reach the rendezvous point. Attacked by whom? Minho demanded. Ships I did not recognize, using weapons that seemed designed specifically to harm dragons. They knew exactly how to disrupt my flight patterns and force me to crash. Daesung's expression grew grim. Someone with detailed knowledge of our weaknesses provided that information. The implications sent a chill through the room. If there was a traitor among the dragons, someone with access to their most closely guarded secrets, then the entire draconic dominion was in danger. The Crimson faction, Taehoon said quietly. They are the only ones who would have such knowledge and the motivation to use it. But they are still our people, Minho protested. Surely they would not ally with outside forces against their own king. Power corrupts even dragons, Daesung replied sadly. Some of our younger generation believe that diplomacy is weakness. They want to conquer rather than negotiate, to rule through fear rather than respect. Jaewon listened to this conversation with growing alarm. The political situation seemed incredibly complex and dangerous. If dragons were fighting among themselves, the results could be catastrophic for everyone in the galaxy. What about the Earth Defense Force? Jaewon asked. They are sending ships to investigate. If they find dragons here, it could start a war between our species. Your people need not worry, Daesung said with a slight smile. Dragons have been visiting Earth for centuries without your governments knowing. We are quite good at avoiding detection when we choose to. Centuries, Jaewon repeated in shock. We have been watching humanity's development with great interest, Minho explained. Your species shows remarkable potential for growth and adaptation. Many of us believe that humans could become valuable allies in the challenges ahead. What challenges? Daesung and his advisors exchanged meaningful looks. Finally, the Dragon King made a decision that would change everything. Dr. Jaewon, what I'm about to tell you is known to fewer than a dozen beings in the entire galaxy. There is a force moving through the outer rim of our galaxy, consuming entire star systems. We call them the Void Devourers, and they represent a threat unlike anything we have faced in millions of years. Consuming star systems? Jaewon felt his knees go weak. How is that possible? They are creatures of pure energy that feed on stellar radiation and planetary life force. Each system they devour makes them stronger and allows them to consume the next one faster. Taehoon's bronze scales seemed to dim as he spoke. At their current rate of expansion, they will reach the core worlds within 50 years. And the secret meeting? Jaewon asked. Was supposed to coordinate a joint defense with every major civilization in the galaxy. Humans, Andromedans, cetaceans, even the reclusive crystal builders. This threat is too large for any one species to face alone. The scope of what Daesung was telling him made Jaewon's head spin. While he had been treating minor injuries and studying local wildlife, forces that could destroy civilizations were moving toward inhabited space. But the attack on you prevented the meeting, Jaewon said. Yes, and without that coordination, each species will face the Void Devourers alone. The results will be massacre on an unimaginable scale. The Crimson faction wants this, Minho added angrily. They believe that if other civilizations fall, dragons will emerge as the undisputed rulers of the galaxy. They are fools, Daesung said firmly. Even dragons cannot stand alone against this threat. Unity is our only hope for survival. Suddenly, the communication system in the clinic crackled to life again. Admiral Park's voice filled the room, but this time his tone was different. Instead of the confident authority from before, there was a note of confusion and concern. This is Admiral Park to all stations. We are detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system, but our sensors cannot identify their source. All ships are to maintain defensive positions until we can determine what we are dealing with. Daesung smiled grimly. It seems my people are making their presence known. Your Majesty, a new voice called from outside the clinic. Jaewon looked through the broken doorway to see another dragon approaching. This one was smaller and younger than the others, with scales that shifted between blue and green depending on the light. Report. So-young, Daesung commanded. The human fleet has taken defensive positions around their space station. They are clearly nervous but have not made any aggressive moves. However, we have detected Crimson faction scouts at the edge of the system. They followed us here, Taehoon said grimly. Of course they did, Daesung replied. They want to finish what they started. The question is whether they will risk open conflict in front of human witnesses. They might, Minho warned. If they are truly allied with outside forces, they may not care about maintaining the secret of our existence. Jaewon realized that he was about to witness events that could reshape galactic politics forever. The small research station on Ashara Prime had become the center of a crisis that involved ancient dragons, mysterious threats, and the future of multiple civilizations. What happens now? He asked. Daesung looked at him with an expression that was both grateful and determined. Now, Dr. Jaewon, you have a choice to make. You can return to your quiet life as a frontier medic, or you can help us prevent a catastrophe that could destroy billions of lives. The weight of that decision settled on Jaewon's shoulders like a physical burden. Everything he had ever known was about to change, and the choice was entirely his to make. Jaewon looked around the clinic that had been his home for 3 years. The broken door, the scattered medical equipment, and the group of ancient dragons waiting for his answer all seemed surreal. Just hours ago, his biggest concern had been organizing supply requests. Now he was being asked to help save the galaxy. I am just a doctor, he said quietly. What can I possibly do against threats like these? You saved the life of the Dragon King when he was at his most vulnerable, Minho replied. That single act of compassion may have prevented the collapse of our entire civilization. More than that, Daesung added, you treated me as an equal when you had every reason to be afraid. You showed me that humans possess qualities that even dragons can learn from. That perspective could be invaluable in the trials ahead. Before Jaewon could respond, alarms began blaring again from the research station's communications center. But this time the alerts were different. Instead of the measured tones of military preparation, these were the harsh, urgent sounds of imminent danger. All stations, Admiral Park's voice crackled over the speakers, now filled with barely controlled panic. We have multiple unidentified contacts approaching at impossible speeds. These are not conventional spacecraft. All defensive platforms are authorized to engage. Through the clinic windows, Jaewon could see flashes of light in the upper atmosphere. The human fleet was firing at something, but their weapons seemed to have no effect. Whatever they were shooting at was moving too fast and too unpredictably for conventional targeting systems. The Crimson faction has made their move, Taehoon observed grimly. They are attacking the human fleet to prevent any witnesses to what happens next. And what happens next? Jaewon asked, though he was afraid of the answer. They will try to kill me and blame it on human aggression, Daesung replied. Then they will use my death as justification for war against Earth and every other species that opposes their vision of dragon supremacy. The sound of explosions grew louder outside. Jaewon could see the research station's defensive shields flickering under some kind of energy bombardment. The 43 people he had served as doctor for 3 years were in mortal danger, and there was nothing his medical training could do to help them. We have to stop this, he said, surprising himself with the determination in his voice. We will, Daesung promised. But first I need you to send a message to your Admiral Park. Tell him that the Dragon King wishes to speak with him directly. He will never believe me. He will when I appear, before his fleet in my true form. Daesung's expression became resolute. It is time to end the secrecy between our peoples. Jaewon activated the clinic's emergency communication system and opened a channel to the fleet command ship. It took several attempts to get through the chaos of the battle, but finally Admiral Park's voice came through the static. This is Admiral Park. Who is this? Admiral, this is Dr. Lee Jaewon from the research station. I have someone here who needs to speak with you immediately. Doctor, this is not the time for medical consultations. We are under attack by unknown forces. The attacks will stop, Daesung said, taking the microphone from Jaewon. But only if you agree to hear what I have to say. Who is this? Admiral Park demanded. I am Daesung, king of the Draconic Dominion. The beings attacking your fleet are rebels from my own people. Stand down your weapons and allow me to handle this situation. There was a long silence from the other end of the communication. Finally, Admiral Park spoke again, his voice carefully controlled. You claim to be the ruler of a species that most humans believe to be mythical. Myths have a way of becoming real when you least expect them, Daesung replied. Admiral, I am going to transform into my true form and approach your flagship. Do not fire upon me. I come seeking alliance, not conquest. Your Majesty, Minho interrupted urgently. If you reveal yourself to the humans, there will be no going back. Our secret will be exposed to an entire species. The time for secrets has passed, Daesung said firmly. If we are to survive what is coming, we need allies who trust us completely. Without waiting for further discussion, Daesung walked outside the clinic. Jaewon followed along with the other dragons. What he saw next would be burned into his memory forever. Daesung began to change. His humanoid form dissolved into streams of golden light that swirled and expanded into something magnificent and terrible. When the transformation completed, a dragon the size of a starship floated above the research station. His scales gleamed like molten gold, and his wings stretched wide enough to eclipse the moons of Ashara Prime. "Admiral Park," Daesung's voice boomed across the communication channels, now carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in the very air. "I am Daesung, and I offer you the friendship of the dragon people." The effect on the human fleet was immediate. All weapons fire ceased, and Jaewon could imagine the stunned silence aboard every ship. They were face to face with a legend come to life. High above them, the attacking Crimson faction dragons seemed equally shocked by their king's public revelation. Their assault on the human ships faltered as they struggled to process this unexpected development. "Traitors," Daesung called to them in a voice that carried across space itself. "You have forgotten what it means to be dragon. Return to our worlds and face judgment, or be forever exiled from our people." The response came in the form of renewed attacks, but now directed at Daesung himself rather than the human fleet. 3 red dragons dove toward their king, breathing plasma fire hot enough to melt asteroids. What followed was a battle unlike anything in human recorded history. Daesung fought with the skill and power of millions of years of experience, but he was outnumbered and had to protect both the research station and the human fleet. The sky lit up with energies that turned night into day. Finally, reinforcements arrived. Minho and the other loyal dragons transformed and joined the battle. The Crimson faction rebels found themselves overwhelmed and eventually retreated into deep space, but not before one of them managed to send a transmission. "This is not over," the rebel leader's voice echoed across all channels. "The galaxy will know that dragons can be defeated. Your human allies will become targets, and their weakness will be exposed for all to see." As the attackers disappeared beyond the planet's atmosphere, Daesung slowly descended toward the research station. He transformed back into humanoid form, but something had changed. His presence now carried an unmistakable aura of majesty and power that had been hidden before. Admiral Park's voice came over the communication system, filled with awe and uncertainty. "Your Majesty, this is Admiral Park. I believe we need to talk." "Indeed we do," Daesung replied. "And Dr. Jaewon will serve as our intermediary." "Me?" Jaewon protested. "I am not a diplomat." "No," Daesung agreed with a smile. "You are something far more valuable. You are someone who sees beings for who they are rather than what they are. In the challenges ahead, we will need that perspective more than any amount of political skill." As dawn broke over Ashara Prime, Jaewon realized that his quiet life as a frontier doctor was over forever. The storm that had brought Daesung to his clinic had also brought him into the center of galactic politics. Somewhere in the distance, an ancient threat moved toward inhabited space, and the only hope for survival lay in the alliance between species that had just been forged in fire and trust. The human medic who had tended to a broken wing without knowing his patient was a king had become the bridge between civilizations, and in a galaxy facing its darkest hour, that bridge might be the only thing standing between survival and extinction. "So what happens now?" Jaewon asked. Daesung looked up at the stars where other worlds waited, some friendly and some hostile, all of them vulnerable to the approaching darkness. "Now we prepare for war, Dr. Jaewon, and we do it together." The age of secrets was over. The age of alliance had begun.